Welcome to the Flex Forward podcast, where grit meets growth. With your host, Nick Espanet, bringing you stories of resilience, reinvention, and the real climb to success.
All right, everyone, welcome to the Flex Forward podcast. Today, we're joined by Shauna Zamarripa. Shauna works at Community First Health Plan. She builds data strategies in healthcare, and I can't wait to learn more about what that is. I'm somewhat of a caveman when it comes to IT stuff at times, so I love learning from people who are experts in that area. So, Shauna, welcome today. Can you kind of give everyone a high-level snapshot of what it is you do and what your company does?
Sure. So first off, thanks for having me today, Nick.
Glad to have you.
What do I do? There's so many ways I could say it. I take numbers and I make them pretty. But in all seriousness, I kind of look at data storytelling, right? I think a lot of things when it comes to data, people think, oh, it's black and white, or it's just numbers, or, it's just charts or graphs, and it's not. You need to approach data with a strategy. Whose story are you telling? And my passion, like with healthcare, for example, being able to find things like co-occurring diagnosis, right? We know that there is a link between, say, for example, somebody who has bipolar disorder and diabetes. And how are we going to treat that person cohesively, right? Because a lot of mental health medication can impact diabetes medication or mask side effects. So what we're trying to do here at Community First is kind of take the data stories of our 170,000 souls that we're responsible for and say, okay, what can we do to create a comprehensive plan to give you total health care, where we're not just treating the symptoms, but we're treating the person and really approaching it from that personified perspective. So, really kind of saying, okay, take the socioeconomic stuff out of it, take the nerd stuff out of it, take the numbers out of it. Who are these people and what are their problems and how can we treat them in a more holistic fashion and what can we do to get them the care that they deserve?
Oh, I love that because I was thinking completely different tracking numbers and payments and reimbursement and stuff like that. But I love that. That's awesome. So you're more, this person has 2 or 3 comorbidities or different diseases. How are those meds interacting? And especially now more and more everything. I originally, I went to school to be a physical therapist, worked in a hospital for 10 years, we went through the transition from everything being on paper, computers a little bit, to the painful times. I went and visited some friends, and it's so much more. They use AI to just give a brief, like in a paragraph or two, everything that's in the chart that I used to spend 10, 20 minutes looking at every page before we went in to see a patient. Now it gives you some bullet points of that's what they're telling me, which is awesome. This, asks more of this data is in there, and it can say, hey, it in an instant can compare, instead of somebody having to go through, all right, these 5 patients had diabetes and bipolar, and it was so slow before. Now someone like you can put it in data. That's awesome.
It's exciting. I mean, it's actually very exciting work. And one of the things my team is working on right now is kind of a comprehensive look. We're calling it Member 360, but a comprehensive look of the 171, give or take, a few thousand souls that we're responsible for, and saying, okay, if you have, say, a maternal member who, has a history of preeclampsia, what do we do to help treat that member? What do we do to get them the best prenatal care? What does our postnatal care look like? And just kind of give that whole view of the patient. So I'm hoping that it really transcends healthcare. And Community First being a smaller part, right? And you're right? Because we do the claims and the processing of that and the payments, but we're actually a child company of University Health Systems, which is one of the larger hospital systems. So, knowing that, like, we're kind of their preferred insurance provider, knowing that, having, a lot of the access to, patients' data and information, being able to, build a full profile of an individual, it really can be transformative in the healthcare space. And, me, of course, being the nerd that I am, AI, I love AI. I'm certified in AI. I think it enhances so much of what we do. You know, it's not going to replace people, but it's really going to give, I think, a different perspective and add a lot more efficiency to the mix.
No, for sure. I think in many walks of life, and just like the healthcare thing in the hospital, my friends that are still there, like you get these data points, it's going to make that they can now see, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 more patients a day, instead of, if they're not spending 10, 15 minutes, at least the first time they see a patient, looking at every single sheet. And then, what you're talking about, the preeclampsia, if the nurse or the caregiver can walk up and say, hey, here's what we know about this person, all just in a summary on the first page of their, it's not even, maybe not even a chart now on the computer of what they come in. So that stuff's awesome. So how did you get into the data processing world?
So I got into data before it was cool. It's actually a pretty personal mission for me. So I actually was a teenage mom. I was 14 and pregnant, and I was pregnant with twins.
Oh, wow.
And I was reading, and this was 31 years ago. I'm aging myself a little bit, but it was a long time ago. And back at that time, I remember reading an article, I think it was in 17 magazine, that, said if you're a teenage mom, you're always going to live in poverty. You're always going to struggle. Your kids are never going to have any of the advantages, that are out there. And I remember reading that statistic and saying, as the kids would say it now, bet, right? But I was very, very determined to prove them wrong. And I started really studying, facts and figures and data. And I ended up putting myself through the last 2 years of high school in 1 year. And then later on down the line, just learning everything I could, everything about coding, web design. Much of it at the time was self-taught till I finished, my degree. But back in 94, 99, right, everything was kind of self-taught. You were building HTML in Notepad, right? So a lot of it was very much self-taught and learning as I went. But I've had the opportunity throughout my career to work with some of the biggest brands in the industry. I've subcontracted stuff out for like Facebook, Instagram.
Wow.
Seen all the types of different marketing data points that they collect and the stories that they tell about people. But that's what data is for me, because I don't look at data the way a lot of other people look at data. And I think that's why I've been successful, because my leadership style is different. My viewpoint is there's a person behind each data point, and that person deserves their story to be told with dignity and respect and kindness and understanding. So I approach data very differently. I look at the human being behind it.
Well, that's awesome to in healthcare, doing that, because you got to remember that all that data crossing is a person. But kudos for you for taking that article and let it motivate you, and then sticking with it. So great. So 31 years ago, there wasn't probably much. I was in college in 88 to 92, so a little before that, and I, didn't even know what the internet was. I had a couple of friends that were computer. Oh, they did some kind of computer major, and I was like, well, what are you going to do with it? It's unfathomable. But so way to go. So now there's probably a lot of competition out there in data, IT stuff. What sets you apart? And you may have just answered this with a personalization on it, but what sets you apart from some of the other people out there?
I think with data. So one thing I've learned throughout my career, especially working with as many analysts as I've worked with, most analysts they think they're very linear thinkers. Like, how am I going to get from point A to point B in the fastest, most efficient way possible? But they're not really thinking of the data behind it. Like, how else can you break it down? So one of my favorite games when I'm teaching my analysts, and one way I stay sharp too, is I'll take a single data set and I'll say, okay, your goal is you got to beat me. And I give them a data set and I give them 5 minutes on the clock. And it can't be a data set that they've worked with before. It can't be a data set I've worked with before. But I say, what value can you extract out of this data? What story can you tell out of this data?
Yeah.
So I'll just start listing points out, and just go rapid fire succession. And what I do with that is I'll take that mold and I'll use that with the analysts to build something that's truly comprehensive. Like, I'll take some of the suggestions they have, we'll take what I've got, and then we'll say, okay, let's really tell the story of this person, or these people rather, let's say, okay, we have identified that we have a huge problem in gaps in immunizations for children between, 0 and 15 years old, specifically when it comes to polio. But we found, as we narrowed down, like we said, okay, well, what areas of the city do we have a problem in? Okay, well, how far are these people away from their providers, right? And continuously growing with the data and finding that, the people who are further away from the providers have transportation issues getting to the doctor. So what could we do, as an organization to fix that? Should we do more mobile clinics, right? Go into the neighborhood and get those immunizations done. Are there, other reasons that people might opt out of vaccinations, right? I'm not preaching that somebody has to do something, but it's more of a, we've identified a problem, we've identified a metric, and we say, okay, what can we do next to fix that problem? So using data to make it actionable. A lot of folks will just throw data up on a screen and say, okay, well, we've served 170,000 people this year. Yay us, right? Good job.
Sure.
And we've done $9 billion in business. Oh, yay us, great job. But tell me more, right? Say a lot more with that data. And I've noticed over the years as I've worked with analysts, that's something that really does differentiate how I do things. And the way that I kind of tell the data stories and the way that we're able to represent them by saying like, let's start at the top and then work our way down. Let's get more granular in detail to really, really make changes and really drive change in our organization.
Great stuff. So if I just think that's great how you're taking that data and helping people. So awesome. So if people are listening and want to get better at, being with data, oh, you know what? This is a daughter. Hang on.
No, you're good.
I forgot to turn off my do not disturb. She'll call her mom. If somebody wants to, if somebody's listening and wants to get better at what they at being a better data analyst or just interacting, what are some of the things you've done to help improve your, how you've grown in this industry and improved in the industry?
I have actually leveraged AI in several capacities to say, hey, what are some good books to read? There's one that we read recently in-house. Like I have I have one guy on my team who's a very avid reader. Greatly appreciate him for that. And it's telling stories with data, right? But at the end of the day, it's how are you working with the data? How are you challenging yourself, right? So instead of just saying, okay, I'm going to answer these questions, what else can you get out of it? One of my favorite sayings is any data set will confess to something if you torture it long enough, which is true.
Yeah.
You just have to figure out, what value can you extract from it. So, I mean, my first and best suggestion is take a data set and start thinking about different ways that you could break that data down by date, by person, by time. Should you look at intervals? Should you look at, if you're looking at employee data, should you look at their tenure, right? Talk about looking at, a ramp plan for somebody. You have to think more like people in the business. Talk to the people in the business and say, what problems are you having? And then as you're working with the data, how do you use the data to solve those problems? And it becomes easier and easier as you do it.
Awesome. Yeah. And repetition and just getting in practice, I think getting with other people or reading books. So that's awesome. What has been one of the bigger challenges you've had to overcome in recent history?
A lot of times it's working with, say, sides of the business or the stakeholders, and they want to come to the table with a solution, right? They want to tell us, oh, you should use this data set and you need to deploy this logic. And I tell them all the time, I'm Google Maps. Don't tell me how to get there, just tell me where we need to go.
You'll figure it out. Awesome.
Working more agile with the data rather than, kind of parsing it down, especially in healthcare. You deal with a lot of doctors and nurses, right? And it's the way they think. They see a problem, they want to prescribe a solution for the problem. Sure. And that's not in any way a bad thing. It's just how they think. So it's challenging them to think a little bit differently, and have a little bit of a different viewpoint on things, not be so prescriptive, right? Like, I'm your doctor in this case, so tell me what the problem is, and then let me prescribe you a solution.
Awesome stuff. So it sounds like things are going well in your business, and as a lot of people start having more and more success, they start considering or thinking about, what the future holds and potentially creating some sources of passive income to either enhance current or your what you're currently doing, or maybe replace it someday. What are your thoughts on passive income?
I need it. I want it. I still don't know what I want to be when I grow up. So I feel like that makes me kind of interesting. But, I subscribe to the thought process of you need at least 7 sources of passive income. And you never know what's going to happen in any economy. I truly and sincerely believe that you need to be financially independent. I've been reading that most people reach financial independence in their 50s. I'm hoping that holds true for me. But I definitely am looking at, hey, what are the next moves? Should I go back to blogging? I had a very successful stint in blogging, several years ago, was on the front page of Yahoo, and did very well, right? I know blogging is very saturated right now. I'm on TikTok. I've experimented a little bit with that, just surpassed, I think, 12,000 followers. So now I
Oh,
can,
wow.
do the creator program. Little things to supplement my income, looking at buying maybe a couple boring businesses, right? Because as much as I love what I do, I don't want to do it forever. I would like to, travel and enjoy my life and see the world while I'm still physically capable of doing it.
Sure.
So passive income, I think, is a must.
No, that's great. And it allows you a little more freedom to work, when you want to. So that's awesome. So as we're wrapping up the interview, do you have any exciting plans or initiatives in the next 6 to 12 months?
I think my exciting plans and initiatives in the next 6-12 months is actually knuckling down and finishing the book that I've been writing for the past 5 years.
Oh, cool.
I finished writing it, but I need to edit it. And get it out there and circulating and figure out, what does that next step look like? Do I want to dip my toe back into consulting? How do I want to live out, the next couple of years? So I would say next 6 to 12 months, I'm hoping to pleasantly surprise the world and maybe even pleasantly surprise myself.
Awesome. Well, great stuff. Shauna, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing insights and tips with our listeners. If people would like to get in touch with you, what's the best way to connect with you?
You can look me up on LinkedIn. It's usually the quickest, easiest way to get to me, but I am on all socials. So, just type in my name. You'll find me everywhere: LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok. I'm pretty much everywhere you want to be.
Awesome. Great stuff. Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to get to know you and learn what you do. So I have a different perspective for data now, rather than just being numbers. No, there's people behind it often too. So that's a great perspective. And thank you for bringing that to me.
No, I'm happy to be here, and I really appreciate the opportunity to get on here and talk with you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to the Flex Forward podcast. If you've got grit, growth, and a great story, visit flexforwardpodcast.com/guest to apply and join us on the show.